Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, November 22nd, 2021, the Village of Villa Park, Village Board of Trustees. Clerk Karnecki, please call the roll.
Trustee Salella?
Here.
Trustee Corkery?
Here.
Trustee Kozar?
Here.
Trustee Kumar?
Here.
Trustee Murphy?
Here.
Trustee Patrick?
Here.
President Kazone?
Here. Please stand, do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do a quick prayer after. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together this evening. May we have meaningful discussions that will help us to assist our village in these trying times. Help us to share meaningful discussions that will affect the staff, directors, and the residents of Villa Park. Guide us through the challenges we face, and may we approach each other with respect and kindness as one group. In your name, amen. Okay, what I'd like to do is we are going to move the public comments on agenda items until after item 6, our presentations. I know there's been a lot of questions that have been floating around about 6A and 6B. So we'll have the presentations, and then hopefully that may answer a lot of questions that people may have, and then if there's still any more, then we'll have discussion afterwards. So we are going to move public comments till later. We'll go to amendments to the agenda. Do we have any amendments? Trustee Coker. Go there.
I don't know if it warrants an amendment, but since we are having a presentation by Catalyst Partners, basically the same as what was, or maybe not the same, but what we had talked about in executive session. My understanding was executive session was a confidential session, that we don't go and discuss it in public. We had one on August 11th, come to find out that whatever we talked about in executive session was then brought to the Lyons Club. We had an executive session last meeting, and now we're having this presentation, which the board didn't vote on or wasn't aware of or didn't ask to happen. So in my mind, I'm thinking that there is no confidentiality in executive session if either through yourself as the president or as the manager can just bring things out of executive session to have for public discourse. Shouldn't executive session, at least at the end of executive session, there should be some sort of statement as to what is confidential, what is public? And if that's the case, wouldn't it make sense to, at the end of executive session, decide, hey, let's bring Catalyst Partners back to have a public display or public presentation. I'm all for the transparency. I'm glad they're out here, and I'm glad they're coming in today. But I feel that as a board, we're either being misinformed or manipulated, that we're under the guise of confidentiality, but everybody else is running around talking about what we said in executive session. So I welcome you as a presenter. I'd love it if you talked about that, and perhaps the other plan that was presented in executive session about selling off all of Lyons Park. So however you want to present that, but I don't understand this whole executive session if we're just talking about it. So maybe that's an amendment to the agenda. Maybe it's something that we have to clarify. We do have an executive session tonight after this, and I'm glad to see that we have an agenda for the public to at least see what we're going to be discussing like we didn't have last time.
What is up for discussion tonight, to the best of my understanding, is not the purchase price. Executive session with regard to the sales of real estate should be limited to the purchase price and the immediate terms of sale. With regard to the development of an entire area, that should be held in public session. And with that reminder, that is why the agenda is as it is. I think you make a good suggestion at the end of executive session that the board come to an understanding that what was discussed to the extent permitted by law should be considered confidential until released to the public. And maybe that's a practice we can get into. But for purposes of the presentation tonight, it is my understanding that it is in addition to a purchase price in the minimal terms of sales. So it's woefully, I believe, is important that it be presented to the public for public discussion and input.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, okay. So we don't need to make an amendment then, right?
No.
Okay. 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 Trustee Kumar?
I think he was first.
I'd just like to echo that. I've been refraining from discussing this with the public because I was under the impression that it was all confidential. So in the future, if it was clearer what we can say, what we can't, because
It's a great idea, and we will make a practice of it. Thank you.
Yep. Trustee Kumar?
I have a sort of an amendment. I would like 6B to be done first, the first presentation to be our conceptual design for our community recreation center, because I think that feeds into what we plan for development there. And so I'd like that to be done first, and then second to do 6A. Can I make a motion to do that?
It's a motion to amend.
Yeah, okay. So we have a second on the
Mr. President, I'd make that second.
Trustee Patrick? Okay. You need a roll call on that? Yeah, roll call vote then on that amendment. Clerk Konecki, please.
Yes, okay, just wanted to make a note what this is all about. Okay, Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Kozar,
Yes.
Trustee Corkery,
yes.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
Trustee Salella,
Yes.
Trustee Kumar,
Yes.
President Kazan.
Yes. Okay, so be it, then we'll move 6B to 6A when we come to that. Okay, any other amendments? Okay, seeing none, we will move to item 5A, the Community Fund Commission.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Elaine Santoyo, she will be, her term, November 22nd, 2021, till April 30th, 2024. And a roll call vote on that, please.
Was there a motion? There
Oh,
wasn't a motion.
oh, motion, all right, we have a motion on that, sorry. Trustee Patrick,
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion.
okay, we have a second.
I'll
Trustee
second.
Salella?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call.
Okay, Trustee Corkery,
Yes.
Trustee Kumar,
Yes.
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
Trustee Kozar.
Yes.
Trustee Salella.
Yes.
President Kazan.
Yes. Okay, so with that, we will move to item 6B, as a presentation of conceptual designs of a community recreation center, including amenities and/or recreation program space by Williams Architect. Director Gola, let's start.
Good evening, thank you. I'd like to introduce Tom Polis and give you a little brief history on Williams Architects, if I may. Williams Architects, originally established in 1974 and reorganized in 1994, has become a recognized leader in professional architectural design. For 46-plus years, Williams Architects has demonstrated an in-depth understanding of the requirements for successful architectural design by developing innovative design solutions that incorporate the components necessary while introducing the most cutting-edge technology to the final design. With their firm serving a range of clients as diverse as their projects and senior management remaining personally involved throughout the phases of each project, Williams Architects brings more than 125 years of combined hands-on experience to every development. A full-service firm established more than 46 years ago, Williams Architects has built a solid reputation and assembled a dedicated, skilled team of architects and technical support staff. They are at the ready to take on new design challenges in order to achieve creative, cogent, and inspired facility solutions. Williams Architects offers outstanding service to a range of clients in recreation, municipal, library, golf course, clubhouse, religious, and other markets. They have completed award-winning projects and have worked with the Village of Villa Park on numerous things since 2013. Tom Polis is here tonight. He's the CEO and managing principal of Williams Architects. Tom will present a conceptual design of what could fit at Lyons Park. If and when we get a green light to proceed, then we'll schedule community input meetings, and Williams will start the development and refinement of the project. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tom.
Thanks so much, Greg. Good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here.
That was way over the top from my perspective, but it was welcome. We really, truly have, the one statement there, appreciated our working relationship since 2013, so we envy that and are very, very proud of that and appreciative of that. Let me pull up the presentation here. Should load up pretty quickly. Can everyone hear me okay? And hopefully the recording? Good. So, my focus in the organization, beyond being CEO, is really all about sports rec aquatics. Since I started with Williams some 25 years ago now, going on my 26th year, that's been the project sector leader from my perspective on projects. And we've worked on projects across the country, from Washington to Florida and from Massachusetts to California. But we've sown our seeds here in Illinois, and you're right in our backyard, and we're very, very happy for that. Tonight's presentation will be the site plans that were organized for this conceptual design, and I do stress conceptual here. Just ideas, a test fit of what Lyons Park can contain in terms of a recreation center and open space and parking in regards to the same. Floor plans, so with the test fit, we had to come up with a rudimentary, call it, design on the ideas and the program elements and the organization of the same within the facility that will continue to be refined. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A after that, and we have some examples. So without further ado, as we looked at the design, and we had a few options that we studied forward and backward, we started looking at the idea of bringing the facility forward and making a presence towards the Great Western Trail, really letting it be a beacon and an icon and an oasis to the main drive, and then making an attempt to actually connect it to the Great Western Trail. Because, hey, listen, you got bike riders, you have walkers, all these people. That's a wonderful attribute. If you rank top 4 survey ratings in public recreation, they're trails. You have one that's adjacent to your property, which is beautiful. Aquatics, fitness, and gymnasium, and a track. So actually 5 top rated survey elements across the country. They almost always come top 5, and we have all those ingredients in this project. So we've sited the facility. It's at 38,000 square feet right up front with immediate presence, and adjacent to that right now we're talking about parking for not only the rec center now, but for the future of the recreation center and the future of this park at Lyons Park. And what we've illustrated here in dashed lines, kind of hard to read, but it is an outdoor aquatic water park with an expansion to the back of the recreation center that would support a efficient way of getting people out to the aquatics, so you don't have to have duplicate amenities. What I mean by that is the changing facilities, the support facilities. You're already building some of them in your facility, and you just add on to them to take on a future water park. So you do have that opportunity here on this park. But I also wanted to share that, well, if the desire is to just create a lot of green space and call it recreation area, passive to the park, we can put some green space in front, we could put some green space in back, and we'd still put the parking right to the right-hand side on both of these options, which holds 200 cars. Again, seeing an expansion opportunity, you know, as we design these facilities, we say the only change that we know is change will come. So allowing yourself to have some flexibility for expansion makes a whole lot of sense. And whether we land bank that parking for the future or we build it all now, the 200 cars is allotted for and can fit on this site. And we still kept the presence of the connection to the Great Western Trail. As we move into the floor plans, how the space can be organized, we put both levels on one sheet here, but taking you into the entry, we'd come into the main entry, which again, you'd have main focus off the main road. You come in, you are controlled right upon entry. As you look at this great lounge space and entry lobby vestibule, this is really your public celebration space. This is where all users come in, and it's instant awareness of all the main elements of the facility. So if you look at it closely, you have instant awareness of the gymnasium. You have instant awareness of control and security, and more importantly, greeting and hospitality. You have instant awareness of your program rooms, and even a little cafe that we've situated here with a kitchen, which I'll show you in some illustrative fashion a little later in the presentation. And then the creative kids. And then you'd think, okay, the upper level, what about that? Well, when you're in this space, we got an atrium space. You look up, you see the track going not only around the gymnasium, but bringing you out with a catwalk to the main lobby. You have your Group X, and you have your fitness. So when you're standing down, you're looking up, and you're actually seeing the spaces above you. Again, this is just an organization of a footprint that lets us compact the footprint so all 38,000 square feet are not at grade level. We can do it more cost effectively in a two-story solution for the cost of an elevator. We have all our exit requirements. We have our main elevator in here as well, so it's controlled. It's right up front. We have our grand staircase down to the bottom here towards the south, right upon entry. And from a visibility perspective, everyone's there, and I guess getting and celebrating the spirit of community together. As we move into the program, kind of some overall square footages. We have 500 square feet in athletics. We have about 5,000 square feet in fitness. We have close to 5,000 square feet in general program. What it takes to run and operate this facility at 2,000 square feet. And lobby circulation and support compose about the other 9,500, so a grand total of 38,000 square feet. You had some visionary staff here talking about do this right, do it for the opportunity of the future, not just for today's needs, but for the future needs, and we're all about that. This is the right size facility for a village and a community of this size, based on our historical experience on this. And an idea of what a gymnasium could look like, where it has one high school court but allows two cross courts, allows pickleball, which isn't illustrated here right now, but there are stanchions for pickleball. There are opportunities for drop-down nets in both the long and cross dimension, so you could have even junior league play on four courts for practices and stuff like that. You have an ability to do badminton in here and volleyball, so it's really a multifunctional court. The details of a wood floor or an elastomeric floor, where it's more of a rubberizer, enduring sports surface, those come later in a project, but this one is outfitted with all the components. And what you might take notice to is we're all about sustainability. We brought into this translucent panels that bring in natural light without a whole lot of glare on it. You know, actually we could limit the glare to nothing. This is kind of from the photography. For play, and you can have the lights off during the day, quite honestly, and even in cloudy weather, it makes even for better diffused light. And then up above, we would structure a two-lane track. The three-lane tracks have gone by the wayside nowadays because runners and joggers pretty much coincide and coexist in the same lane. It's the walkers who need that next definitive lane for if they have a stroller, if they're just, you know, in a position where they're not as strong to kind of for the mobility. And here you can start to see some of the partitions going down below, but it's a good way to take use of what I call the third dimension, the volume space, at a more economical scale, and many of our clients have taken advantage of that. And down below, we lace it with storage, viewing opportunities, and even windows up above. So you're actually connecting with nature. You could look at Lyons Park up here. You could see from the distance down below what's happening in the lower level of your rec center. So it creates for a nice experience for all the indoor users. Then the fitness is really a combination of cardio, resistive, and a limited amount of free weights in a flexible fashion that you can change with the times. What's most important about this is that we outfit it with the right technology, we give it the proper volume, and again, connecting it to the outdoors is really important. And that is usually often supported by what we have here is the Group X. This is more of an instructed. The fitness was self-instructed. This is more of an instructed class, but nowadays you could even do them remote with screens. You could have people in California, you could have people across the country from their home televising their experience, and it's good for dance, it's good for aerobics. If you put the right beams up here, TRX, we can put the bikes to the backside for spin. We have the right storage rooms. It's not pictured here. Actually, you could see it in the mirror, where you do the walk-through storage upon entry, and we queue the people outside. And then the multi-use rooms. These are rooms with a lot of flexibility, so doing the carpet on these rooms has gone by the wayside. We do them more with flexible vinyl flooring, where you could create meeting space out of here, you could create banqueting in here. What you do to appoint it with sinks and things like that is important, and how you tie it with the kitchen, which is in the background here, is also important. It has a dividing partition, so you could split it in half. For larger gatherings, you can have your Lions Club meetings here, you could have an abundance of meetings here, as well as birthday party rentals and even wedding receptions. It would hold somewhere close to 200 seats. But backed up to it, which is just as important, is that you have the right support, and not only the storage, but the warming, catering, kitchen, teaching kitchen. So in there, you could have a little instructional opportunity for the youth, for the adults. On the counter itself, it's outfitted for warming up and serving in there, but it's more importantly, it's outfitted for caterers to come in, plug in, bring in their warming carts, and serve the major events. And then if you're doing this strategically enough, you see a roll-up counter in the back, right here, that is able to serve the general lobby. I mean, you don't have to do all this, but to have something out there as a complement, even if it's a juice bar or a coffee bar, is another way to serve just the general public from a single space that supports it at a pretty economical cost. So all these ingredients are what we're talking about right now, and then the kids stop and creative kids, childcare for when little Johnny and Dad want to come, or little Susie and Dad and Mom want to come to the facility and use it, have drop-off hours. This is a wonderful space for that, but I'll be honest with you, those hours are limited at peak points of the day, so you got to think about creative use of a space like this, and so you can use it for birthday party rental, you can use it for additional meeting space, for additional creative child space, so it doesn't have to be singularly focused to just the child watch perspective. It's about programming, working with staff to program those hours and understand those times availability. So as we design, we always think about program. Program is what you all want to do in a room, and then space program is how we develop that program so it gets the best utilization. And our sweet spot is usually, as you may have heard from previous discussions, when Pros was on as our performa specialist, our sweet spot's right about 80 to 85% utilization. If you're at 30, you're really low. If you're 60, you're not doing too bad. And if you're at 100, you're at each other's throats. So that's kind of what we strive for. So we look at things that have flexibility for multi-use within the space. And then the main lobby, just kind of what that could look like. This was our project in Forest Park, the Roos facility. It was slightly smaller than this facility, but it had a lot of the same components. And again, you start to get that instant awareness, that point of hospitality, that first point of greeting, and really that community and celebration space. And I can't stress that enough, because that is, if anything's all-inclusive for the public with Wi-Fi set up and everything, this room would be the place of gathering. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity and open it up to questions and answers. Yes?
Excuse me. Okay, Trustee Kumar, thank you. Go ahead.
I have questions about pricing.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a couple of structures depending on our funding. Obviously, we're gonna plan it out, what we want. And so we need kind of pricing with what the price, like you gave us pricing in 2017, which had different factors. It had pricing with the outdoor pool, pricing with an indoor pool, pricing with, different things. And we don't kind of have that pricing on this, the most recent pricing. I would really like it if we were given that kind of an estimate or a ballpark.
So we do have that at the back end of the presentation, more broad scale than that, because we're not at the level of service that we were back then on this. Again, this is a conceptual organizational study. We were test fitting the site, test fitting the elements, looking at how they all fit and lay out on the site. You have other considerations on this site as well that I'm fully aware of, so you have to make those decisions. But I could certainly share with you the pricing as illustrated, if that's okay with you, Mr. President. Sure. Is that okay? So what we've done is we boiled this down, and if we're going to get into the drill down of each component, we can certainly, but we don't have indoor aquatics. Future aquatics is future, so I'm not going to speak to the point of future aquatics till that you give me a date range for that. But we have the site cost right now with the 200 cars, as illustrated at 2.1 million, round number. We have the building cost at 13.68 million. So a total site and building construction cost when you put the general contractor and all the contingencies in the project at 15.79 million. Then you have soft costs, not just professional service fees, but all the testing and everything else that's going to go on the project, and more importantly, what's going to outfit the project. So furniture, fixtures, and equipment. I always make that as a kind of example of if you shake a building and everything that falls off, that's furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. So your computers, your desks, your chairs, your fitness equipment, all your miscellaneous equipment falls under that too, and that would give you a total project cost as illustrated at 18.15 million for what we've illustrated thus far. Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
Have you guys given any consideration, or do you have any thought about subterranean parking? I just look at the layout you had there, and it seems like quite a lot of parkland's getting turned into asphalt that, doesn't drain, you can't play baseball on it, that sort of thing. It would be kind of a loss.
Yeah, we have internally, we've investigated that, and again, until all the pieces land, it's really hard to start kind of honing in on those. So I think right now the objective is to show you how much of this can fit on this site if it was all recreation, basically, right? And you might have a difference of opinion once you start to explore your other entrepreneurial opportunities, which might definitely force subterranean parking, and maybe a split of subterranean and a little bit above ground, because as you know, going all the way under is far more expensive than bringing it above ground too, but there's some aesthetics to that.
Just one more. Director Gola said that you guys have worked with the village before. What other projects have you worked on?
So we've worked on this particular project in many layers. All from 2013, we were studying the pro forma. We also looked at your pool project, and that whole discussion of what should happen there for the current time and the future. And from our sports rec aquatic perspective, that's what we've been working on together. What? All the feasibility studies that came along with it, yeah, that supported the need, basically, that brought, the wonderful news that I heard, because I couldn't believe it when you guys got $10 million. We work with a lot of agencies, we've done a lot of grants. That's a pretty high mark on a grant that you all were afforded to, so congratulations to you all for that.
Just Kumar.
Now, you said for the future you've planned for the space possibly for a pool area, because from the feasibility study you guys did, it was found that the pool was one of the number one thing that people in Villa Park wanted at that point. I don't know if, of course you're going to get out and find out what people want today, but I don't know if that's necessarily changed, and that's not part of this project, or it hasn't been priced in at this point. I think it's very important we get a price on that, as well as that was a real interest of most of the people in Villa Park.
Well, if directed, we can certainly do that. We have the historical data in our firm to do that.
So
At today's price.
Yeah, at today's price.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the idea behind this, was to eventually get public input 2021, 2022.
Correct. And as Mr. Gola pointed out, that is the next step of this project, if you all find it worthy at a point in time to move forward with and to obtain your grant and see what you could do to move it forward.
Do we have any kind of rough time frame for the process going forward for this project? Anything like that?
Sorry, what kind of?
Like a rough time frame for, when we'd next discuss this, when we'd be voting on this, when we'd start public input, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Manager Keener's been in contact with our grant people, and he's got some comments on that.
Thank you, Honor. Yeah, so I was able to touch base with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, our representative that's been contacting me about the $10 million grant. So the grant is going through the IDNR. We are able to delay signing the agreement for the $10 million as late as March of 2022, but no later than March of 2022. And that would be for the grant agreement. They would want some other materials supplied to them in advance. And so, say we executed the grant agreement in March of 22, the village would have 2 years to construct the improvement, which would take us to March 2024.
So I will say from an architectural and professional's perspective, that's going to be a working tight time frame to get that done, but doable.
Any other comments? Trustee Kozar.
You had said that you've been, in one fashion or another, working on this since 2013?
With early studies.
Okay.
Not what we're looking at right now, working with you all from a professional perspective.
Were you working in a general concept form for just Lyons Park, or have you also looked at, tell us what else you've looked at that you've
So,
designed.
and Greg, you could expand on this, no, we looked beyond Lyons Park, we looked at the Iowa Community Center, I think we even looked at another parcel that was up for consideration. I don't even have all those particular sites available to me right now, but I could certainly dig up the history on that and pull them up.
That would be great if you could, and if you could forward
Yeah,
that.
I can absolutely do that.
Have you done any prospective studies on the 100 South Villa property? Do you know which one that is?
I don't.
If you have one of your maps, it's also known as, we refer to it as the old AK Mulch property, directly across from the Great Western. If you go right back to that, it would be in that lower right-hand corner.
So
Maybe you
right
have your
about,
pointer? Yeah, right.
right about here. I don't believe we studied anything over there.
We didn't own it. Didn't own it back then.
Yeah, when you've been involved, we didn't own that property. We only owned that property now for a year and a half,
years, something
almost
like
2 years, yeah.
Currently, that is parking. Oh,
But I could certainly pull up what we did study.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Kumar.
Currently, that is parking for our village already, and conceptually also, that might be a possibility for future parking for our village, depending on
Okay.
our plan.
Trustee Corkery.
I was wondering if the location of this would be part of the public input or something we can affect going forward. Would it be part of the meetings with the people of the town have a say in where this goes, or just what goes in?
I would imagine that could be part of it, the discussions.
It would probably be worthwhile, I think.
Okay, anyone else? Trustee Kozar.
Just the last thing, I don't know if you're heading out right away after this, but we have an executive session that's on the schedule for after this meeting. If you'd be interested in joining that for a short period of time, just to have a kind of a roundtable brainstorming of it.
No, we can't invite guests when we're going to discuss conveyance of property. That's strictly executive session. And the discussion of development, of potential development, is for open session, as we've just done.
Okay, then the follow-up to that is, I would like to see a plan that incorporates Lyons Park and AK Mulch, or 100 South Villa. If that's something that you could conceptualize and maybe get back to the board in some rough concept. We own 100 South Villa, which is roughly the same size as what you're suggesting the parking lot to be. And it could just provide for a great piece of property in downtown Villa Park.
Well, I would just, as a suggestion, I would hold off until we have our next presentation by Catalyst, because that's Catalyst's presentation is developing that AK Mulch property, so.
Yeah, I think once you guys kind of put the pieces together, you're going to have a clarity now that you've seen what because this doesn't mean this is where the recreation center is going in its totality and as it is illustrated here, but when you hear both presentations and understand the kit of parts, I would say, I think you'll have pretty clear directive of us and where you'd like us to explore our options, and yes, we're absolutely willing to do that.
Trustee Kumar.
The back of the site, as it's presented right now, that's for future development in the interim. Suppose we aren't yet doing future aquatics. What can you put there till we have, say, the funds to do future aquatics?
Again, I think that would happen in the next phase and see what the program elements of a desire are, what the longevity of that is, and where you put good money. Because if let's just say the aquatic center never goes here, then I'd make a whole host of recommendations. Let's say the aquatic center will end up here and not at another park, then my recommendations might look a little differently and give you more flexible space with some limited but I'm seeing a great opportunity for flex lawn or a little mini ballpark. When I say flex lawn, that can give you sports fields there, that can give you a whole lot of opportunities beyond just community. So I think that's to be determined as we start to develop the project further, and all your opinions matter at that point in time, right? So we'll consider all of them.
And so, as an architect, do you prefer bringing it, you think it's better to put it closer to the trail?
My personal opinion, but I mean, we're here to listen and work together, but I really like that oasis off the trail. I like that presence. We've done it on more than one project very successfully, but that doesn't mean that's right for your community, so we're going to have to work it together and weigh the pros and cons on what happens on the other side of the site as well.
Okay, well, thank you, and you stick around for some questions.
Yes, I'm going to definitely stick around.
Great,
Yes.
thank you.
Yep. I would have stuck around for the executive session if I could have made it in. I guess I didn't have the card. Or the credentials.
We'll get you back.
Okay.
Okay, so we will,
And thank you.
thank you. We will move on to what was 6A, presentation by Catalyst Partners for proposed mixed-use housing development of 100 to 110 South Ville Avenue and a proposed senior development on the eastern portion of Lyons Park. And with that, we'll have Director Patrick up here. Director Burke, I'm sorry. Director Patrick Burke.
Good evening. Catalyst Partners and Marquette Companies has proposed a high-density mixed-use residential project. The first component would be on 100 and 110 South Ville Avenue. It would be 210 one- and two-bedroom apartments. There would be 10,000 square feet of commercial on the Villa Avenue side. And this would all be built on structured parking, which would include at least 100 public parking spaces. That component would be approximately $50 million. The second component that they're proposing is senior living for active adults 55 and over, and this would be on the eastern portion of Lyons Park. It would be 91 and two-bedroom apartment units, also built on structured parking, and that component would be about $25 million. And David Lyon of Catalyst Partners is with us this evening, and he's going to present that concept to you. You're welcome. And you can just, yeah. Actually, this is a PDF.
You're the pen provider.
Good evening, and thank you for your time tonight. The starting point for this presentation really is to underscore the fact that our team, in designing this first level of concept, really wanted to pay homage to the history actually of Villa Park and the historic nature of this part of the downtown business district. And so to that end, we wanted to recognize, as a starting point, certain locational elements that are the foundation of the history of Villa Park, and they include certainly the Ovaltine factory and then the original two railroad lines that now are represented by the Prairie Path and the Great Western Trail. So along those lines, in our effort to brand our project, we started with those elements, recognizing that railroad theme, but also elements of this area in that even with the existing amenities, with the businesses and the path, it certainly is a multi-generational gathering place. And so we really took the point of view that we wanted what we developed to be the union of all of those elements that Villa Park has. So the union reflects the railroad aspect of its history, but also the goal of bringing people together in this downtown location. So I think you've already seen this map with the prior presentation, but I'll sort of orient you once again. Sort of center of the slide, you see the AK mulch site, and then obviously the upper left of center is Lyons Park, bifurcated by Wildwood. So this perspective is a perspective looking northwest at, oh, thank you. Okay, great, thank you. Does this work? Oops, oh. Oh, the bottom one? Oh, okay. Oh, got it, thanks. So this perspective is actually as if you were hovering sort of over the Ovaltine development, looking northwest. At the bottom of this slide right here, you see the eastern terminus of the Great Western Trail with the wrought iron arch. And as Patrick mentioned before, what we're proposing here, 210 market rate apartments on a podium of structured parking. And within that structured parking, underneath the housing, would be at least 100 parking spots dedicated to the public with what I understand to be free access, because we certainly wouldn't be trying to obtain any revenue from that. So public parking of at least 100 units. And in addition to that, we would provide structured parking for our residential units. Fronting Villa Avenue here would be approximately 10,000 square feet of commercial space. And the goal would be not to have that occupied by our offices, but actually businesses, hopefully restaurant, some kind of establishment such as that, wrapping this corner to try to activate not only Villa Avenue here, but to engage with that eastern terminus of the Great Western Trail. The idea would be to complement and add to the vibrancy that was mentioned before, actually, by the architect from Williams. So we feel what we're proposing here would be congruent with that last presentation. I think Patrick also mentioned the approximate value of this development would be $50 million, so it would provide significant economic impact to the community. And I think history shows in other communities such as yours, when you can create this kind of catalytic project, it really will put wind in the sails of the existing businesses and other opportunities that exist there. Oh, this is going to be really hard to see, so let me see if I can. This slide actually is going to give you a summary of the internal and external amenities to the project. There we go. So typically in these market rate apartments, we offer a wide range of amenities for our residents. Internet, plank style flooring, walk-in closets, high-end appliances, those kind of things. Probably similar in nature to what exists at the Ovaltine apartments. In addition, the community amenities to share by the entire residential community would include bicycle storage areas. That's obviously going to be something really important here, given access to both of those trails. Additionally, we'll have secured mail and package delivery center. We'll have our own internal community room with Wi-Fi and a coffee bar. Probably because of the proximity to the fitness center that's proposed, it might not be as large as what we would normally provide, but we typically provide our own fitness center for our residents. And then, as you might have noticed on this last slide, I'll jump back up to it here. Right in this area here, we have what we call an amenity deck. And so on that deck, which in this case, we're designing it so that it overlooks Cortese Park, the depot with the stage, and the Great Western Trail, we would offer these kind of things: green space, pool, fireside lounge, seating with grilling stations, and a dedicated dog walk area. And then additionally, as I mentioned before, we're going to have dedicated parking for our residents, and that will be included in the rent. Often what we're doing now is also including electric car charging stations within that structured parking. And then initially as planned, what we hope to do is offer a dedicated shuttle service to our residents during the morning and evening rush hours to get them, if they desire, from the development to the Metro train station, free of charge. This slide hits on our efforts towards environmental sustainability. And so as you see in this list, we offer a myriad of things to that end. Energy efficient heating and cooling systems, appliances. We really focus on the structure of our building envelope, and we use recycled building materials, low emitting finishes, and LED lighting in common areas. One of our goals along these lines of sustainability is we're going to explore initially the concept of offering a mass timber wood hybrid development. And what that really means is that all of our floor planks would be made out of cross-laminated timber. So it actually offers two things. It offers lower carbon sequestration because it's actually farmed and harvested wood for this purpose. But also it creates a really unique ambiance within the apartments because you end up with exposed wood ceilings and other elements. Here's a view looking northeast as if you were sort of hovering over the Kenilworth townhomes. And it gives you a perspective of this facade of the market rate apartments, but it gives you some perspective to Lyons Park, specifically the building that is being proposed by Williams for the rec center. We're just showing that as a box. And what we're proposing to do to augment that is the 90 unit active older adult senior community there. We think there would be some pretty amazing synergies between the seniors having access to that social amenity, the recreation amenity for health purposes, but also the economic impact. We project that that this development would be approximately $25 million in value, and we believe that if structured correctly, this project could help pay for the development of the rec center, specifically through carrying on its back to a certain degree some of the public parking for the rec center, which we would propose to be done on a podium like the market rate housing beneath the senior housing. So it would serve not only our residents once again, but it would have additional dedicated parking for the rec center, both at grade and potentially one level below grade, with access for that parking directly into the rec center. So the net result theoretically would be that the cost of that rec center would be lower because you would be carrying the cost of that structured parking on the senior housing. So now I'm going to show you a few slides that just show you some studies of what we would like to do. This is a perspective looking up at the building, looking west down the Great Western Trail. What we're really trying to emphasize here is once again activating this corner, not just the streetscape, but be creating some opportunities both by creating opportunities to be able to serve people outdoors even when it's raining or the elements aren't that great, by recessing the commercial off of the sidewalk slightly and also creating this overhang element at the corner of the commercial space. Just another perspective of that same location. Now this one, we took it a little further in this study. Once again, trying to carry through some of the history of the rail and the trail now. The idea here would be, could we create some kind of interesting architectural element, in this case, recreating the image of a rail car as part of the outdoor patio that runs along the Great Western Trail there. This is an important slide and image for you to understand because this shows the view from Villa Avenue in Wildwood. So what you see here, looking southwest slightly, this is Wildwood, and here you see the entrance to the structured parking off Wildwood. And then the northern end of the commercial space I was describing, right there. So what you see here as our last slide is, again, the branding, the theme that we have for this residential community that we hope reflects what we believe to be an important part of Villa Park. And that, again, is not only the history of the railroad, but the union of people of all walks of life and certainly generational. And we hope that this project, when brought to fruition, will help make that happen. So thank you very much, and would welcome the opportunity to answer questions.
Thank you, Dave. Trustee Corcoran.
Just a statement, really. I like a lot of what I saw for the AK mulch site. I definitely would like to see something go up there. And I recognize we need denser housing for environmental reasons, for tax reasons. I like a lot of the features. But I'm really not interested in selling off any of Lufkin Park, or not Lufkin, excuse me, Lyons Park. I can't sell off our commons like that in good conscience. We need the public space, we need the green space.
Okay. I just want to make one comment on that. If we do put the rec center there and then we have surface parking, the area where the phase 2 would go, the senior housing, is going to be covered with asphalt anyway. So you're losing that green space anyway.
Sure.
So just as a thought, instead of having just parking near asphalt, if you have a building there, now you have tax revenue, you have property tax revenue. Whereas if it's if you just have surface parking for the rec center, the village gets nothing out of it. So that, I mean, it's something, again, to think about,
Sure.
as we're discussing this. So.
I would just hope there could be another way.
Yeah.
Because in some way that the half of the park doesn't get covered in
Yeah,
asphalt.
no, I understand. Trustee Kumar.
Along similar lines, my fear of that is now we've constrained that extra space for growth. As the architect pointed out from Williams Architecture, we want to plan the space for the future in long terms, and that was and with some flexibility in mind. And once you put up a space there, you lose that flexibility. Even if it's parking, we can't change once the parking is in and the building is in, you can't change or use that lot ever again. So we basically lose that space, and whatever we have to do will have to be done from other space elsewhere in Villa Park. And that's a little concerning to me, certainly, when making this decision.
Okay, any other comments? Trustee Kozar.
Is your company interested in just developing the 100 South Villa property?
Oh, certainly. These are not, thank you for that question. I should have pointed that out. These are mutually exclusive projects, meaning yes, the short answer is yes. We certainly feel that the rec center in that location would add a lot, right, to that, because the goal for us in our project is to add to this center of recreation and vitality. So would love to see the recreation center, but certainly our main goal here is to build at 100 to 110 the AK mulch site with the market rate apartments.
Trustee Kozar.
The follow-up to that is, are you maxed out on the size that you want to build? If you weren't going to do the Lyons Park portion of it, would you consider going larger on the 100 South Villa project?
Certainly, certainly. That's a question you don't often get asked in a community where you go larger, right? So I appreciate that question. But the constraint would be we want to stay at a high-rise code. And so typically, when we're trying to create the kind of structured parking we're creating, we're going to have a podium, a 1 or 2 story podium and 4 stories of stick-built residential above it. Beyond that, you start to risk going into high-rise code, which makes it much more expensive. We will study it, so there's certainly a chance of doing that, and we can come back with some options. But again, we'll find the balance between higher density, more units, and still being able to provide those amenities I showed you, such as the amenity deck and some other things we think are really important to that residential community. But thank you.
Okay. Great,
So,
thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay, seeing as we've gone through these presentations, we have public comments on the agenda items. Clerk Konecki, do we have people signed up?
I had no one signed up, no.
Okay. Okay. If you could come up and sign your name and state your name and address, but please sign in.
Hello. My name is Nicole Mundy. I live on the 600 block of North Lincoln. And I'd love to talk about all this second, but this is more important to me. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if y'all heard, about a week ago there was a shooting at Safariland. A man was shot, and the shooter ran through my neighborhood, was at my neighbor's backyard. This is highly, highly disturbing to me. So I am curious why Safariland is open again, and have you guys done anything to force them to make the place more safe by either adding, just a couple ideas, I'll let y'all figure it out, but either adding metal detectors or having someone search people who go in there. This should not happen ever again. So I think that needs to happen. Number two, our side of Ville Park is very dark at night. There are no street lamps except on corners. These blocks are long, and no wonder this guy got away. There were cops across the street from our house all night, and they're the next day searching for a gun that was dropped. So I really think that Safariland needs to be held accountable, and they should not be open until they have something in place to keep kids safe that go there. So, that's all I have to say about that. About all this that I really didn't plan to talk about, but I have a lot to say. The indoor pool, I gotta say, is, I'm a swimmer. I currently go to Elmhurst to swim indoors in the winter, and I go to Lombard to swim outside in the summer. So I'd rather keep that money in town and have those things here. I also hope that you have a sliding scale for Ville Park residents. We have a lot of people here who can barely, stay above water, and I think we should realize that our community is not full of people who have extra money to spend on these things. So we should offer a sliding scale to people so they can get in for free and use it, because just because you don't have money doesn't mean you don't deserve nice things. Second of all, I'm curious if you had the architect triple bid this project. I only noticed one presentation. I'm curious if you guys are triple bidding that. You should. And then, is the architect, are they paid for this work? Curious about that? Or are they doing this pro bono until they get the project signed?
This is strictly a proposed thing. They've done a lot of this work pro bono for us.
Okay.
So,
Okay. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
okay. Our attorney just notified me. Go ahead.
The law prohibits us, are you listening to this? I meant, it's not, you are not allowed by law to go out for bidding for architects, surveyors, or engineers. You have to look at the qualifications and only choose an architect that has qualifications, or an architect that you've worked with in the past. That's what the law says. But where you would go out for bidding, mandated by law, is for the actual construction. So you'd go out to bid for the you are not allowed to go, you're not, that's why I said, and I didn't mean to sarcastic, I'm saying, it wasn't my idea, I didn't write the law.
Okay, you can't speak
Yeah.
from the...
Excuse me, yeah. If you want to talk, you got to come back up. Okay.
Yeah. but that is what the law mandates, and so we got a proposal from the architect that the village has worked with in the past, as required by law.
Okay, this is discussion on, just on agenda items, but since you brought up Safari Land, Chief Rivas does have some comments about that. Chief, would you mind?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor. As you know, you saw officers all throughout the area. We had literally 40 different squad cars from all across DuPage County as far as Willowbrook. They were coming from near and far to assist us. He was able to evade that perimeter we had set up. But all the officers there did a great job and a great job of policing. We had the person identified within the first 5 minutes of being on scene, of a chaotic scene, of everybody running from the business. What I can tell you in the aftermath of all that, and obviously he was taken into custody 6 hours later in the city of Chicago. In the aftermath of that, in discussions with the business, and it's probably more appropriate for them to talk about if you talk to them in person, but they have entertained an agreement or entered into an agreement with the security firm, as well as having our officers every time that they're doing paperwork or being in the lot right now. I understand your concern, and so we obviously know it's a priority. Because as I pass through there, and I pass there quite often on North Avenue, there is a lot of cars that are back there. Matter of fact, Saturday night, the lot was full. So he's aware, we're aware. Luckily, he has enough security cameras that caught the whole incident that make sure it solidifies what happens in the court system after this. So I hope, maybe we can have a discussion afterwards offline, so I'm not taking up everyone's time to address anything else you may have.
Okay, do we have any other comments about agenda items?
I didn't sign up, but now that you moved it to after the presentation to see it. Cheryl Tucker, 434 South Cornell. I was on the Park and Rec Commission in 2015, 2016, when we had them come out and do a concept with residents at that time, and at that time we did use Lyons Field only as being our program for them to come out and give a design on. As you know, at that time we didn't have the parking lot. We didn't own that. AK mulch was still in effect. So they made a design for us with underground. At that discussion, there was a discussion of underground parking and spaces for the rec center on the design that they gave us at that time, with the aquatic center behind it. And that design was using all of Lyons Field at that time, just to give you some insight on that. My question is, we have a bike and rec bike survey being done, and he brought up the entrance being off of Wildwood, which is the area that there's making a discussion of where the bike path was going to go through for our extension for our other
Tri-trail connector. Yeah.
Right, and will he be doing if this goes through, are you going to stop that, because we're paying for that survey, and obviously if he builds on that, it's going to change the traffic pattern of that area. If they're going to be entering the parking lot in that area, it's going to make a total different structure for the bike path. Are they going to put that into the safety of the fact of the design? The other question is, he mentioned resident parking and the 100 spaces. Is the 100 spaces public spaces he's speaking of only for public parking, or is that 100 spaces include what the residents are? So
No.
are there parking on top of the 100
No,
spaces?
there's 100 parking spots dedicated to public parking, and then there'll be additional parking for the number of units that are there, whatever the code requires. There'll be 100 plus.
100 plus whatever
whatever
parking it
code
is for
requires.
the residents. So
Correct.
we're speaking 100 plus what it would be
That's correct.
for the structure.
Right.
So you're talking about maybe more than 200 parking places
Right.
being under that structure for that.
30 seconds.
And third concept is, has he checked into the resident area that he's talking about? Because we've got gardens station going up with all kinds of restaurants and stuff going on, and all those residents things. Now you're talking about adding another group of residents on the other side of St. Charles. Are we having enough input of businesses to fill those areas and residents to be able to fill both complexes that you're putting in here? Because there's no tax write-off if we don't have both of them.
Yeah. I'm sure that the developers have brought that into their plans. Obviously, they've done studies to show that there's going to be enough people coming in to both fill the units there, and then also businesses that'll come in, into the commercial spaces. So that's all part of their plan. They wouldn't be putting 50 million into it, unless that was all planned out. So, okay. Any other comments?
Al Baltice, 1100 South Oakland, Ville Park. This Catalyst presentation and the Parks and Recs presentation, I find it's really exciting. It'd be transformative, I believe, for the village of Ville Park, and it'd be a great economic base for us, not just with the tax money from the property appreciation, but also from any businesses that do occupy the lower levels there. I think that's a great opportunity for us to make ourselves better and more attractive to the community and to our neighboring communities. We're kind of right in the middle between Elmhurst, Lombard, Oak Brook. We're kind of like the stepchild. So this would elevate Ville Park to level with the neighboring communities and bring more revenue and more people into Ville Park for our businesses. As far as the rec center goes, it has to go somewhere, and I think it's a great opportunity to use that property for the rec center with housing above a parking lot. For us to build a parking lot there would probably cost us a couple $1 million. I don't know what exactly the dollar amount is, but that'd be money we'd have to pay for ourselves out of our pockets. So we do have the green space behind it if we move the rec center up toward Wildwood. So the other thing besides that, the comments that I heard earlier tonight about the exec sessions. When you go into exec sessions, you're only allowed to talk about certain items: personnel, collective bargaining, purchase and lease of property, sale and lease of property, pending litigation. If you weren't talking of any of those items, maybe there was some purchase of property having to do with this development catalyst, but if you deviated from the selling and the ownership of that property, you were in violation of executive session. And if you were, I believe your minutes, those violation areas, should be made to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew D'Alessandro, 843 South Michigan Avenue. First off, I'd like to say I'm going to echo what Al said there. It's very exciting seeing these plans come up, seeing some designs, albeit conceptual. It is cool to see that as a younger resident in the town, as someone who's grown up here. It's really cool to see, especially I really like the element of the history brought in from Catalyst there. I love history. I love the history of Ville Park. I like talking about people, and especially bringing the railroads into that. It was really cool. So I really like seeing that. In addition, a couple of questions here. For the rec center, I believe we have a grant of $10 million. That total cost came out to be $18 million. If that gets made public, or this is public, so if you could have a response on where that other $8 million is going to come, I'm sure that the public would like to hear that. And secondly, the big talk that's going to be talked about is green space. We've lost a lot of green space in Jackson Field from the new Child Development Center that's going up. Any of this takes away from green space. I love the location of both the rec center and the development being in center part of town. Get people into the center part of town. Albeit though, we do need to find, my challenge to the staff and the board is, let's find some green space that we can not only create or repurpose from our other elements of Iowa Community Center and Jefferson Pool, if the pool ends up going in the, to Lyons Park as well, how can we repurpose that as green space? Is there any vacant, empty lots or vacant, empty businesses that could potentially turn into green space so that we can counteract it? Almost like if you're going to cut down a tree, where you plant the next 2 trees. So if we can have some type of counteracting there, I think that would be great. Otherwise, I really like the concept of the center of town being the gravitational point for people, and just those concepts of what downtown Ville Park and on the Ville area looks like. It would be really something cool to be able to see come to fruition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we got a couple of things to answer some of your questions. I know one, as far as the green space, I think conceptually, one of the plans is that if this is built, then we no longer need Iowa Community Center. Iowa Community Center would be knocked down, and then that would be green space, the football field, soccer field, something there. As far as the other $8 million, Manager Keener's going to write a check for it. But, no, we discussed that, and Manager Keener can kind of go over some of the ideas that have been brought on that.
Well, thank you, Honor. And then, I was taking notes, and one of the items that kind of brought my attention was that the Ulufkin Park, the repurpose to get green space. I mean, the pool has been demolished, and that's been returned to an open area. And I can't tell you, Your Honor and Board, how many times I've driven by and saw pickup football games or a pickup soccer game going on there with younger adults. And it's kind of a nice little area. To talk about the funding for the rec center, I've talked to our village financial advisor on several occasions and looked at a number of options. We can do a short referendum process. I'm going to refer that as a SRP, and through that, our financial advisor, myself and Marlene, have talked about issuing $7.5 million worth of bonds. When you took a look at the 18.5 million, some of that is the contingency fund. I think in each segment there's like a 30% contingency fund built in, and so if we did the 7.5 million, that would take us to 17.5. More than likely that's without parking. To make things work, I've talked to Director Greer and Marlene and our financial advisor. We would be using some of our stormwater funding to bring costs down from the 7.5. We'd be probably using some roadway money for the parking, guaranteeing the D-sub money and the half-cent non-home rule sales tax, a second half-cent towards the P&I for the 7.5 million. And if the building was built, if you decide to build it, etc., and we go forward with the short referendum process, we would be doing interest-only payments on that 7.5 million through 2027, and then the December payment in 2028 would be a P&I, and that would be close to $620,000. And then the rest of the payments would be $620,000 until the bonds were paid off. And I believe the bonds would be paid off in December of 2041. But realistically, we can make it happen in a $7.5 million by paying interest only through December of 2027. And the interest only payment, I want to say that's $220,000 plus or minus a few thousand. And we can do that. And I do have a spreadsheet, but I don't want to bore everybody with it. So that's just off the top of my head briefly. And obviously this is going to have to be bid. We're going to have to decide about the parking. And, one of the items that was brought up by our some of our speakers is if the parking went underneath the 55 and up building, that would save the village cost, because parking is expensive, very expensive. And I don't have to tell Mr. Lyons how expensive it is. if you're gonna do underground parking, it's about $25,000 a spot. So we need about 120 parking spaces for a park and recreation center that's 38,000 square feet. So you're talking 3 million plus. And then you add that on to the 18.5. And so, so when I say that we'll be borrowing money from storm drainage, it could slow a project down. When I say we might be borrowing money from the half cent or some road money, that might slow a project down. I'm being honest with you, honest with folks at home, and to make this project happen. We do have a grant from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, as I mentioned. It's a $10 million grant that came out of the 2020 capital bill. Never thought we would get an email saying, hey, this money is available. We need you to supply some documents and sign this agreement. Once you sign the agreement, you have 24 months to construct the improvement. If you fail to do that, they will more than likely, the IDNR will more than likely ban the Village of Ville Park for 2 years from receiving any grants, and that's in writing. And so if we're going to do this, we need to really think about what we're doing, how we're going to pay for it. That's why I've reached out to our village's financial advisor and talked to him twice. A $10 million grant doesn't come along every day. As you know, Tom mentioned, it's one of the largest ones you've probably ever worked with.
From a grant perspective, yeah.
And I can be honest with everybody in the room and folks at home, when I got the email, I almost fell out of my chair. Because, I'll be honest with you, so in the 2020 capital bill, we still have $288,000 earmarked for storm drainage. We have several different components earmarked for the fire station, $75,000, $50,000. Who knew that I'd get an email for $10 million? I thought we'd get the 288,000 like we got the 500,000 for South Michigan. Who knew you'd get a $10 million email? It just, Your Honor, I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah, oh yeah, I was when you emailed me about that one.
And so, that's why we're here tonight, to discuss it, to seek direction. Staff needs direction in more ways than one. It's not only location, but financial. And so, looking at the spreadsheet from my financial advisor, he believes at the top end of the bonds, the interest cost would be about 3%. Net would be 2-something, so it looked very attractive. What else can I answer, Your Honor?
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay,
That's
thank
it,
you.
yeah. I don't want to wear you out yet. You got a lot talking to me.
It is kind of warm in here.
Yes. Okay, any other comments?
Sorry, let me sign in first. So I'm Vicki Flaskamp, 421 South Oakland. Just wanted to say I agree with everyone else that say, why are we only looking at Lyons Park? I think we need to look at other areas. Unfortunately, due to the grant timing, it seems like we're going to be pushed into doing one thing versus another versus what's holistically and great for our community altogether. We don't want to be pushing that. We want to make sure we're making all the right decisions. So I agree with him that when we're looking, the gentleman from Williams, that we love to see what our community looks like from a vantage point, the train station. I mean, I rode the train for many years. I saw all these Levy villages putting in all these rec centers as I rode the train. Think about that. That's a better location because you get a lot more people going down that train every single day. I really do believe that we do need to sit there and think about it because we are killing the two best ball fields we have in our town. What are we doing? Where are those going? You talked about a mini ball field. I don't need a mini ball field. I need a ball field that has 90-foot bases. My kids had to go out of town in order to find a program to do them. We had to go to travel because there was not a program within Ville Park that we could do. We need to make sure that we keep our kids here. So that is something that definitely needs to be addressed because the one that's built at Willowbrook, it drains improperly. We have canceled many games because of that, and there are no lights. So when it got dark, games were over. So we need to figure that out. You know, we also need to sit there and think about the fact that when we're looking at these two plans, how convenient. that they fit together so nicely. I mean, we started doing this plan for our rec center back in 2014. We only bought the mulch center about a year and a half ago, and all of a sudden, we have another proposal to actually use that mulch location as well as a location where we want to put a parking lot and use that for another purpose. We need to seriously think about how these came together and how these worked, because that is concerning to the village, and that should be concerning to all the residents in the village. The other thing is, we have not talked about with all of these things, traffic. I live right there. There's a lot of traffic down Ville as it is. We need to figure out, now we're going to have a rec center, we're now going to have another building put up there, plus with the train station, Garden Station, you are pushing traffic all going north. If you've got to get to the south side of town, it's pushing it to Addison as well as Vermont. I mean, you go down Vermont, down to Ville, so you're pushing it down in that direction too. Where are the traffic studies? We need to understand what that's going to do to Ville Avenue, because that's going to be a problem. It's already a problem. So I think we need a lot more answers from our board and from where we're going to go and how you're going to do that. Granted, yes, we can get some green space from knocking down Iowa. Is that the right answer? I don't know. But I think we need to do a lot more due diligence, and we owe that to the village, our residents, because we have made some very poor decisions in the past. One quick thing I do want to say, and I'm sorry if I go over on this because I do think this is a positive. Over the summer, I worked at my mom's house, and I rode from my house to Sunset in Iowa every single day. And there were two incidents, one in Princeton during the summer, as well as the one in the convenience store by Terrace. And I still rode my bike every single day, and I would go home sometimes at 12:30 at night. So thank you to the police, because I felt very safe. So thank you.
Okay. What's it? Okay, one more.
My name is Brian Ziermann. I'm at 112 West Plymouth. First of all, I want to say thank you to you and the boys for everything that you guys do. I've seen it firsthand recently in my area, and I've talked about it at the coffee meetings about the rental problems that I've had. I live right by the fire station on North Side, and it seems like that's turning like ground zero for a lot of the problems with the rentals. Speaking of the rentals, we have two big developments that are going up. We're talking hundreds of units. We're talking a lot of people. There's concerns already about the fenced off property that's obviously going forward and going up by the metro station. Now we're talking about more units. There's going to be more arguments, much of the same about traffic. There's also been discussions as to, do we have enough fire and police personnel, and do we have enough school space? We got two schools by me in Jefferson that are getting added onto already. I mean, are there plans, or you guys looking at that? It's nice to, put something nice in the community that's very good on the eyes, but is it going to support what we currently have right now? As for, a rec center, we got one pool that's gone, another pool that's talking about being replaced in the next few years. Plans for a rec center with a fitness center involved, while it may support youth activities, from adult standpoint, we actually have a lot of fitness centers or gyms in the area. Maybe we can come up with something to have one real good design for a pool for our community, instead of having two pools in the future. It's just my opinion and just my idea. Instead of, like I said, instead of having, fitness center plans, let's focus more on the pool we need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, looks like we're done there. Thank you for everybody for all your comments. We appreciate that. All of these ideas will be, I'm sure, be taken into consideration as this moves along. So with that, we will move to item 7, budget workshop. The proposed 12-month budget for the fiscal year beginning on January 1st, 2022, and ending on December 31st, 2022 has been on file and conveniently available for public inspection in Village Hall and is on the village's website. The public hearing will be held on Monday, December 6th, 2021 at 6:45 to accept public comment on the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget. Following the public hearing, the first reading of the budget adoption ordinance will be held at the regular board meeting. The second reading of the budget adoption ordinance will occur at the board meeting held on December 13th, 2021. And item 7A is fiscal year 2022 operations, and Manager Keener and Director Scheibel will present an overview of the proposed 2022 operating budget. Manager Keener.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor and Board and folks in the audience at home. So the Director Scheibel is going to present the calendar year or fiscal year, if you will, 2022 budget. The budget, as I mentioned before, the proposed budget is a balanced budget, meaning that the revenues outpace the expenditures. And as we go through the various slides from Director Scheibel, you'll notice that projected corporate fund surplus at the end of this year is looks pretty sound. The projected corporate fund surplus at the end of 2022 looks pretty sound. We do have a number of roadways and items planned. The capital improvements for 2022 are pretty heavy, but there's some very important projects in there. Jackson Pond, Maple's already underway. It's going to take a little bit of a hiatus this winter and then start back up in the spring, and some other important projects as well. So when you look at the numbers on Director Scheibel's PowerPoint, the revenues are under the expenditures by about 23 million. That's because of the capital improvements. So, but when you factor out the capital improvements, the budget is balanced by over $1 million. So, Your Honor, I'm going to turn it over to Director Scheibel to start her PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the highlights of the budget include it's based on guidance from goal-setting sessions and other discussions of board priorities. There's continued capital investment in streets, water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure, which are funded by bond funds, low-interest loans, and the non-home rule sales tax. There's investment in equipment using rollover bond proceeds and the American Rescue Plan Act proceeds. There's a focus on maintaining cost-effective and efficient services and continued investment in sidewalks with our 50/50 program. In the budget, we've created a team to address tree removal, trunk trimming, stump grinding, and planting. We've created a team to address fire hydrant painting on the north side of town. The south side was addressed pre-COVID-19. There's major focus on economic development, especially the key corridors of North Avenue, South Villa, and the Roosevelt Road. And there's an implementation and refinement of technology for more accurate and efficient operations, which include a migration to Microsoft Office 365, ETSB radios, body-worn cameras, and further refinement of code red notification system and website redesign. Total revenues by fund. Our total revenues are $58,588,386 net of transfers. The general fund is 40% of the total revenues, wastewater is 16%, water is 12%, debt service is 9%, stormwater is 7%, street improvement 4%, and all other funds 21%. Total revenues by source. This slide demonstrates the sources of our different revenues, and the reason this slide I feel is important is because Up until this current year, 2021, our property tax and sales tax were somewhat even. And so for the 2021 budget, we had budgeted $8.9 million for both property tax and sales tax. But our 2021 projected revenues, our property taxes are lower than our sales tax. And the same holds true for 2022. We projected sales tax of $10,649,000 and property taxes of $9,392,000. This is important because it's reducing our reliance on property taxes as revenue. As we continue to have economic development and the sales tax increase, it's reducing that reliance on property taxes. So that's a positive. And total expenditures by fund are $71,928,863 net of transfers. Our general fund has 32% of the total expenditures, street improvement 15%, wastewater 13%, water and stormwater 10% each, and all other funds 20%. And as Manager Keener stated, this includes 23,334, 958 in capital improvements. This slide demonstrates our expenditures by source, with our contractual being the highest expenditure, followed by salaries, and then our capital outlay. General fund overview for 2021. Our projected fund balance at 12/31 of 21 is $12,323,231, and this consists of 192 days of expenses on hand. Our projected revenues over expenditures are $2,476,369, and projected revenues are 11% higher than budgeted. Projected expenditures are 0.7% higher than budget. The general fund for 2022, projected fund balance at 12/31/2022, is $13,560,353, and that consists of 200 days of fund balance on hand. There's $25,963,297 in revenue budgeted, and $24,726,176 in expenditures. The projected revenues over expenditures are $1,237,121, and the projected daily cost of operations is $67,743. I'd just like to point out on this slide that the projected revenues are well over the expenditures, so we have a general fund balanced budget. In comparison, our 2021 projected revenues over expenditures was $100,000. This slide shows the general fund revenue over the years, comparing, and shows that it's increasing each year. The changes that we've budgeted for 2022 include growth in sales tax, video gaming tax, places of eating tax, and liquor licenses. And there is a slight reduction budgeted in state income tax and use tax. General fund expenditures over the years, we've balanced the general fund. We maintain current services, the funding priority initiatives, which are street maintenance, tree trimming and removals, and economic development. And total expenditures and transfers are $24,726,176. Vehicles and equipment. In the budget, we included 1 vehicle for the fire department, 3 squad cars. Public Works have a street sweeper and a public work plow. Parks, Recreation, and Fleet have a tractor, trailer, and a dump truck. There are several other items on the list. If funding becomes available, we would purchase a mower replacement for Parks, Rec, and Fleet, and a ball field machine. And for Fire Station 82, there would be a boiler replacement and a replacement of overhead doors. The issues to watch in initiatives: revenue changes or opportunities. Recreation adult use cannabis is still a new opportunity for revenues. Our pensions, the investment consolidation is one step, but not a full solution. And what that means is all of the pensions for fire and police are now consolidated into one pension fund statewide, and the hope that that will increase the investment returns. We must remain focused on economic development. We have major capital projects, stormwater projects, including rear yard drainage projects. We need to continue to monitor the state of Illinois for future changes. We need to leverage capital bill dollars, maximize use of facilities in village-owned land, such as in the Hawthorne, Catalyst, and Community Center projects. And then on November 15th, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law, and the new law will invest $1 trillion in the nation's infrastructure, including $550 billion in new infrastructure spending. Pension contributions. They continue to grow at an alarming rate. So this slide demonstrates that in 2010, pensions were about 40% of the tax levy. That's the tax levy that's provided for operations and the pensions. It excludes debt. For the 2020 final levy, 73% of our tax levy went toward pensions. So as these pension contributions grow and as the levy grows, we have less funds available to fund operations from the levy. Our 2021 levy estimate for pensions is $3.5 million. Summary. We have a projected 200 days fund balance on hand at December 31st, 2022. We are investing in infrastructure and capital needs, solving problems, and improving the quality of life. We are funding key initiatives. We are fiscally responsible, leveraging capital dollars, containing and lowering costs, cooperate among departments, working with other governments whenever possible, and planning for the future. That's all. Is there any questions?
Trustee Kumar.
It's kind of a combined question with what we talked about and our budget.
Okay.
So, suppose we go for our community center, 18 million, and there was a question, where we would get the, other 8.5 million from. And, I think, from the top of his head, Manager Keener said we would need about 650,000 a year, is it? To pay interest and principal starting in 2027. Am I correct? Manager Keener.
Yeah.
So, my statements earlier were that we'd pay interest only
Until 2027.
until 2028. So December of 2028, the principal and interest payment would be due on $7.5 million, and that would be about $620,000 for the P&I, give or take a few thousand. And then that $620,000 would carry through December of 2041. So could be 623,000, could be 618,000, depending upon how our financial advisor set up the remaining maturity of the bonds. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Oh, so to piggyback off of that, that's 10 days of the fund balance. The fund balance we have of 200 days altogether, where we had initially only about 100, which is acceptable by pretty much every city around here. And so I think we're pretty comfortable coming up the money for if we give up 10 days of a fund balance. So I don't see what the issue is with coming up with the money and how we need development necessarily to bring it up. We need development, period. That's a totally different story. But it's only 10 days of our fund balance at this point.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. That's a very good question and statement. And, you know, in the past, I've been with the village since April of 2011. And so when I arrived with the village in April of 27, the village had 47 days of corporate fund surplus. And for those of you at home and in the audience, and maybe up here, what that really means is if you stopped receiving state money and federal money and other sources of revenue, you'd be out of funding to pay your employees and your debt within 47 days. So it's taken excuse me, Your Honor, it's taken you, the village board and staff, many years to accumulate this type of funding, corporate fund surplus, and once it's gone, it's gone. And so 10 days, that might not seem like a lot right now, but in 2 years, the village may need that money. If you remember when we went through the COVID, the restaurants and bars were closed, there was no gaming. We were probably short $5 million to begin with, and then things started opening up, and we still, it took us a while to come back, and so it just takes a while, Your Honor and Board, to build that up to where it is. And this calendar year, fiscal year budget, if you will, proposed is about $68,000 or so cost for the general fund per day. Next year it'll be more, and the year after it'll be more, and it continually rises because, like anything in life, most of the time things don't decrease, they increase in cost. So that'll gently rise as we move forward. But part of the plan, again, Your Honor and Board and folks watching, is to use a piece of the D-sub money, which is later on the agenda. And the D-sub is the debt service extension base that we can do as a non-home rule municipality. And so the D-sub dollars are about $680,000 this year. And as our property becomes more valuable throughout Villa Park, that rises. And so next year it might be $685 or $690, etc. But we can use a piece of that D-sub money, leave the general fund money alone, but use a piece of the D-sub money to pay the interest through 2027, because the D-sub bonds are rollover bonds. So every year about October, November, and December, we'll be selling D-sub bonds throughout many, many, many years, and we can continue to use that. And so in 2027, excuse me, Your Honor, just one moment. So in 2027, the 2017 alternate revenue bonds will be paid off, and that is the TIF3 bonds. And so when the TIF3 North Avenue bonds are paid off, then the D-sub money, the whole 680, would be available for P&I for the rec center. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Probably over answered.
It's okay. You got a lot of water there. Trustee Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of quick questions for the manager. Are we able to project our annual cannabis tax revenue, and how does that tie into our current proposed budget?
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, that's a very interesting question that I've received many times. And since we only have one cannabis distributor, sales store, if you will, we really can't mention their sales, their proprietary information that's to be held confidential. Select staff sign an agreement with Illinois Department of Revenue that those remain confidential. But if you take a look through the budget, there's about 3 sections where you can see what we believe the projected deposits in those funds would be from that particular funding. And I think everyone knows that starting January 1st, there'll be a 3% tax on cannabis through the village, and then that comes back to the village. And then, in Your Honor, and an attorney, or you can correct me, but I always say it's like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 of that 3%. So 1/3 of that or so goes to the police pensions, 1/3 will go to the fire pensions, 1/3 goes to park and rec / for a pool, if I'm not mistaken. So it's all divvied up. And then the village also receives another % from the state of Illinois for sales from the state of Illinois. But that's not a lot of money from the state of Illinois. They keep most of that, trust me. But that sort of answers your question. You just gotta kind of look through the pages.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we move on to Public Works.
Bless you.
Bless you.
You're allergic to me.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think we saved the best for last, I'm assuming, with Public Works. I know everybody's been waiting for this one all night, so. Before I get started, I'd like to kind of go over some of our accomplishments that the board and staff has accomplished this past year for some of the improvements that we've made. Overall, this year, we've completed Harvard Avenue from Jefferson Park up to Plymouth. That was a water main replacement project and total street reconstruction. The other project that was completed this year was Third Avenue Improvement Project. That was from Holly to Division, and that was a sewer separation project, along with what was supposed to kind of be resurfacing and kind of gradually grew into mostly a reconstruction project. Lastly, literally just weeks ago, we finished up the Charles Avenue project, and that was a total reconstruction of the street along with sewer separation, sewer lining, and water. So that was almost a complete overhaul of the whole 2 block segments from St. Charles to Oak. So those were 3 significant projects that we've completed. And as the manager stated earlier this evening, we have started the Maple Area project. And in the next week or so, you'll start seeing that kind of get tidied up for winter, where it will be paved all the way through. It won't be the final surface, but it will be a surface where we can plow and maintain operations through winter for the residents in that location. Also, overall, through those capital improvement projects, along with our 50/50 projects for sidewalks, we completed just a hair over 2 miles of sidewalk improvement. And from 2014, we've done about 16.9 miles of sidewalk improvements throughout the community. That's kind of important, I think, especially with the discussion tonight with the trails and a lot of biking and pedestrian activity that we have in our community. Also, we've completed our 21 pavement projects, which this past year included rejuvenation, and then our pavement marking projects. So overall, we touched about 7.8 total miles of streets in Ville Park this past year. Kind of moving on, what are the priorities for this upcoming year in the budget? In the budget, we're looking at several more. I'm probably a little bit optimistic in how much we can complete, but I like to kind of shoot high so that we can try to get as much done. So as we kind of stated, Maple Park would be wrapping up this year, about June, July timeframe. We're looking at doing the second portion of Harvard. If you remember, the portion that we completed this year was funded through CDBG. However, we kind of got out of the parameters that we could get funding for, so we still have a few blocks that we'd like to wrap up and get completed, so that segment of Harvard from Plymouth to Ridge is kind of all continuous with improvements that we made this year. Secondly, I started looking at what we call the college streets improvements. That's kind of been hanging out there in the community for several years without a whole lot of funding. So we're looking at ways of trying to get more components completed for that area of town. So we're looking at Wisconsin, from Vermont to Stone. There's really no utility improvements needed for that section, so we'll look at doing some roadway construction, as that is a referendum roadway. Then the next 2, Wisconsin Avenue from Madison to Jackson, and Yale Avenue from Jackson to Madison as well. That's kind of included in the $4 million for the Jackson Pond expansion. With that FEMA grant, we're able to do the remainder of all the improvements, and with incorporating that is the referendum roads for those locations with the stormwater improvements. The next one we called Rebuild Illinois Roads. As you may or may not know, as part of the capital bill in 2020, there was also a lot of roadway referendum money, and bonds for that did go dedicated to streets and local communities, where we were getting payments for the last year, this year, and this upcoming year of approximately $481,000. So we have $1.4 million. It has a lot of strings attached. It has to be for roadway projects. It kind of follows our motor fuel tax revenue and those requirements. So we're looking at resurfacing several roads that weren't identified in the referendum, or other ones. Currently, we're looking at Wisconsin from St. Charles to Division, Central from Addison to Cornell, and then Cornell from Central to Kenilworth. But we're also collecting some data from this past year on road conditions, and so we kind of want to validate that with that road data before we fully announce those roads. Then lastly, we're looking at Monterey, as that's kind of been the next one on the list that needs to be done, and along with, but that requires loan funding. It's all designed. We're seeking some bypass funding hopefully this spring, but that's all pendent on EPA loan. As the manager's kind of expressed, some of our reserves and some of funding needs to be dedicated elsewhere, so we need the loans to complete that project. And as the board's already aware, we submitted an application for CBG funding for Michigan and Vermont improvement, and then Vermont and Wisconsin. We should be getting those results hopefully in the next few weeks. Secondly, we got some engineering designs that we need to get going. As mentioned earlier tonight, as well as the tri-trail, we do have that incorporated. We kind of expanded the boundaries of the study area, what's in the phase 1, knowing that there's potential for the community rec center now and possible development so that we can accommodate that trail connector in any of those designs. Our engineering firm is aware of those and we keep them up to date. But that does have federal funding attached to it that we were awarded through DuPage Mayors and Managers Commission. So we are moving forward. We also want to get going on the Ville Avenue Bridge improvement, as we do have some funding for that. And that is kind of a known, say, complaint-driven area for potholes, along with that bridge needs to be replaced. We have Myrtle, Bierman, several Wisconsin projects, as that's kind of all on the list. Yale, and then we want to get started on the Washington area combination sewer separation, as that's a rather large project and the last big component that we need to finish out separation of combination sewers. Also included in our, what we call Fund 60, your street improvement funds, we do have our normal maintenance activities, which we do every year, which is the pavement rejuvenation. Obviously, when we repave roads, we want to keep them in the best condition they can as long as we can, so that rejuvenation really does help achieve that. We have some pavement patching that's a little bit outside your normal pothole to try to get elimination of potholes, our markings, sign replacement, street lights. So as a breakdown, if we can get everything that I just listed up there plus a little bit more, I kind of been given the highlight ones, would be about 15 streets touching a little over 5 miles of road. We're projecting a little less than $300,000 in street maintenance cost, a little over $3 million in non-referendum, which would correlate to grants, loans, and then utility tax, and then $8 million of the referendum bonds, for a total of almost $12 million in improvements. The next funds we call the capital project funds. These are your funds 64, 65, 66, and 67 in your budgets. And just kind of highlight, since a lot of you are new, the revenue in this one mostly comes from the utility sales tax. A portion goes into these to fund these ones as available. This year, in this year's budget, we did get the American Rescue Plan Act funding, which is kind of a reimbursement from the COVID. There's a lot of restrictions. I know Manager Keener has been kind of working with Finance Director Cyril on the use of those funds. But other than that, there's really no dedicated user funds to fund these projects. So we kind of rely on corporate transfers, grant reimbursements, sales, leasings, the DSEP bonds that were talked about, and then cost sharing with residents. So the first one is 64, which is sidewalks. We've increased the sidewalk budget program again this year. Historically, it was a little bit lower. We've been bumping it up the last few years, and we bumped it up again this year to about $140,000. And this includes our 50/50 cost share program, where residents will pay a portion when they wish to have their sidewalk replaced. And then we look for a lot of locations that have tree uprooting and damage to our sidewalk. We have the ADA sidewalk improvement programs that got delayed a little bit this year with the state DOT kind of changing the requirements of those type of plans, which makes them a little bit more involved. And that follows our ADA transition plan of identified priority locations and getting several ramps improved. And then lastly, we've also added $20,000 to the budget this year for the bicycle and pedestrian plan, so that we can continue to seek grant funding for those projects as it becomes available. Our equipment replacement fund, a lot of this is maybe where some of that American Rescue Plan funding comes back. Currently, we have one lease on the books, which was the ambulance lease that we purchased last year. And then this year, we're looking at replacing several pieces of equipment throughout the departments. I'll highlight the sweeper because that's my department, as it's one of the oldest and heavily used. Right now, that thing's in operation about every day to help try to keep the inlets clear. We're also looking at replacing some smaller trucks, like the F-250 with plow, the tractor for the park department, 2 party trailers that could be used for lease and parties for the parks, along with a dump truck, the 3 police vehicles, and then the fire department Tahoe. The Stormwater Fund, which was already talked about, this fund is funded by user fee. We usually, on average, get a revenue of about $518,000 a year. As mentioned already, this year we do have the $4 million grant from FEMA. And then, as the manager talked about, we still have some bond revenues that was generated from this I have down, and Director Scheibel can correct me if I'm wrong, about $6 million. So we do need a little bit of that money for the Jackson Pond expansion, as that's been kind of dedicated for that, so about $2 million for the Jackson Pond expansion project's about $6 million. Then out of this, we also have the cost share with residents for our 50/50 drainage assistance program. And we do have that $288,000 that we're hopeful that we'll get that email again from DCO saying that we'll get that money, so we can kind of expand that project. And then we also get the detention buyout fees. When we have certain developments, there's opportunities for developers to buy into a regional detention system by buying out the city, so they don't have to obtain as much stormwater detention on their sites when it cannot be achieved. Overall, these projects that would kind of fall in, the capital projects that fall into the Stormwater Fund would be the Drainage Assistance Program. The Harvard project from Plymouth to Ridge has some stormwater issues. The Jackson Pond, and then obviously Monterey Avenue, which is a separation which needs loan funding. The remaining projects that we have in our CIP that we have not received any funding for is listed here. As we have, these are projects that were identified from the 2013 Christopher Burke study throughout the community, along with the V3 study for Sugar Creek Drainage Basin. We do have the Wisconsin and Yale, which will be hopefully taken care of as part of the Jackson Pond expansion. And then, as the manager talked about, Lyons was always identified in the stormwater plan to help some drainage, so that's where some of the funding hopefully can come in. And then the other projects out there listing. If we had money tree in our backyard, we have about $14 million of projects that would help benefit about 500 homes in the community. The water supply, we obviously had the rate increases, the study done. So this upcoming year, we're projecting a little about $6.5 million in user charges. We're still looking at about $1 million of interfund transfer from the utility tax. And then hopefully we'll get the $600,000 for the Vermont and Michigan project for the CDG, some EPA loan funding. And then if you look at this number, the 471, that is our remaining unrestricted balance. So it's not our cash balance, that's not what we have in the bank, but that's the amount of money that we would have available with that's not already accounted for. So it's a little low, but we've been kind of doing a lot of capital projects to get investment in the ground. And then we've had some unexpected repairs that have occurred with some larger breaks and some other material that's needed for the water department, such as water meter replacement. And then we do have in the budget well 10, which is our last remaining well in the community at Cornell that's having significant problems and needs to be addressed. So that goes into our expenses. Operationally, we're about $2.5 million. On top of that, the purchase of water from the DePage Water Commission was about $2.9 million. And then we have a little over $2 million program for capital projects. And as you can see, we've kind of talked about some of these, some of the capital items that are not physically in the ground is we need to update a lot of our software. So we purchased the Census Analytics, where we can read our meters remotely without having to send a guy out in a car or physically read. We can have that information at the touch of our fingers. We need to upgrade our meters, as that was a large swap out in the 90s and they're starting to become due. We have about 30% upgraded, and we kind of need to do that. We're looking at doing that in-house over time. And then we're in the process of looking at improving what's called SCADA. Our Supervisors Control and Data Analytics, that is our computer program, our brains, for both our water and wastewater operations systems. So that's highly important, and we're a little bit out of date, and so we're trying to improve our efficiency and our response so that we can stay on top of our utilities. Capital-wise, we have Maple area, again, Harvard, Michigan Avenue, Monterey, Ziermann. And then I'll kind of point this out because this is a little unique since it seems that it has not been done for a while. We're looking at doing a little bit more with our internal operational staff. So I have Vermont Street, which is part of the College Streets, and replacing the water main from Harvard to Michigan, which will tie into that Michigan and Vermont grant that we have, and utilizing our staff to install that main. To try to make a little bit more use with some of our resources that we have to advance newer infrastructure. And then lastly, I touched on it, well 10. Well 10 is our last well. It's significantly in decline. We have power issues, we have pump issues, we have the actual well issues. So we're in the process of looking at, can we abandon that well, since we have several connection points with DePage Water Commission, that, in real honesty, if we have to rely on that well, we're not in a position with chlorine and all the other improvements that's needed. However, to abandon a well, it's not cheap. I think we're in the $150,000 to $160,000 range to abandon that well properly. Lastly, the Wastewater Fund. Wastewater has a couple different components. We have the user charges for the actual wastewater. We have a combination sewer separation fund or fee, and that makes up our user charges. So overall, we get about $3.4 million in revenue. With this budget, we'll be trying to get $7.2 million alone, and mostly that's for the separation of sewers. And then conversely, we are looking at a master sewer plan update to kind of identify with some of these developments to make sure that our sewers are in line or capable of handling any future development so that we don't cause future problems. We're still looking at a little under $1 million in utility transfers. And this one's a little bit more healthier position that at the end of the day, we're looking at a fund balance of unrestricted of $1,176,288. The projects associated with wastewater fund, operationally, we maintain all of our collection system, including our pump stations, our lift stations. We do have the wet weather flow treatment facility, and that needs some improvements to that location. And then we have previous loans that we have to pay for, and then we do make some repayments to the street improvement fund. Some of the capital ones that we're looking at that are not infrastructure would be to refurnish our Vector truck. It's a 2008, I believe. So what we can do is build the back end of the Vector truck because the truck's in good shape as those kind of decline over time as you suck up rocks and dirt and everything else. We have our normal sewer reimbursement program where we pay $1,000 for one time for each resident to do sewer repairs on their sewer lateral. We talked about the SCADA, and then we still need a roof on our sewer building, which is at 35 West Home. The major projects, the road components are there, and it's more the same. Most of the road projects and utility projects are all combined. A lot of these, I would say, do pend EPA funding, so we can move forward with them as we acquire the loans. If we don't acquire the loans, they kind of stay on the books as we can get that funding from the EPA. Overall, these are our combination sewer projects. This has been a master plan to separate our sewers, to get rid of the remaining combination sewers. And this is the remaining projects that we have on hand, which is Elm Street, Euclid Avenue, obviously Maple's under construction, Monterey, Washington, Westmore, Wisconsin, and Yale. Totaling a little over $16.7 million and would benefit about 950 homes in the community. This is the maps on the right here. These are projects that have been completed from 2014 to current. And then the projects here on the right in the blue are the projects that are still listed in the current CIP projects, the current capital improvement plan for the next location. So you can kind of see that it is spread out throughout the community. It's not just concentrated on one side or the other. Overall, our CIP includes about $109 million of improvements. We've already spent about a little over $5 million, which leaves about $90 million left to fund. And to fund these projects, as kind of alluded to just with the community recreational building, we use a magnitude of magnitude of different funds to try to correlate and cobble together enough funding to get all these projects, which correlate to utilizing some TIF funding if it falls into the TIF districts, along with water, wastewater, street improvement, grants, and then federal grants. So it's a magnitude of funding and trying to utilize as many grants and funding opportunities as we can to stretch our dollars as far as they can. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Just a couple quick questions for you. How much money is left in the road referendum fund? Do you have a quick number on that?
I want to say, let me log in real quick. I believe we have about 9 million.
Yep.
I think Director Scheibel would have, is it more than that?
Okay. That's, just, there's a rough number on that. You're talking, about main breaks, water main breaks. This year, were we pretty much on par with past years? Are we up at all?
We're about on par for last year. Last year, I think we had about 45, 46 main breaks. I think this year we're like in the high 30s right now. I would say the good news is we're in the process of doing our leak detection throughout the community, as you might see some guys out there listening to the ground. And so far, they've only found about 10 potential breaks. They're not finished, but that's a little bit lower than historically the last couple of years. So.
Good. Okay. And then when you're talking about stormwater, the projects that are not funded is about $14 million. Is there much county money available for that? I know we usually try to get those grants, but is there a fair amount out there?
With all the different fundings, it's kind of ever changing currently because with the rescue funding, obviously they just passed an infrastructure bill with the feds recently. So the county normally does have some stormwater funds. As I believe the parks with the golf course received some funding from the county for Sugar Creek. So there's a lot of times opportunities for those, and so we do explore those as they come up.
Okay, good. Any questions? Trustee Kumar.
Maple Avenue, you're completing it right now. You're working on it. I was always concerned about the fact that one portion of it does not have curbs, the rest of it does. Is there any opportunity to put in curbs there? I think it's, the time to do it is now.
So on Maple, there's several things that we're looking at. Part of the project is we do have some sewer, the opportunities for residents to participate, so that eats up some of the funds. Currently, we're going to reevaluate where we're at in the project as we end to see if there's additional funding that can be used for potential curbs. Right now, just to put in what I would call ribbon curbs to hold the pavement, not doing any piping, leave the ditch drainage on that one block, we're looking at about $140,000 of increase. If you want curbs with the high back, sidewalks, you got to put in drains, it starts becoming unattainable. So we are looking at that to try to enhance that location as well.
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Are you done? Okay. Trustee Corcoran.
So there was the mention of street lights in the street maintenance section. Is that just maintaining or are we adding more? Because it was a concern that was raised tonight. I get a lot of emails about it, brightening up some of the darker parts of the village. Do we have any plans to do that?
So currently we don't have any lighting enhancements. The lighting plans that we do have kind of on record is a lot of the existing poles are made out of metal, and we're kind of improving that to aluminum stuff as salt eats metal pretty good. So we've had degradation, and those are the existing ones on Ville, on Ardmore, and I believe St. Charles. Some of the other lights throughout the community, we kind of have a hybrid of lights that are owned. Any of the metal poles or concrete poles are village owned. Any ones that are on wooden poles are actually ComEd owned. So we pay ComEd for those portions. So to get additional street lights, there's a little bit of especially in neighborhoods where we don't have any existing street lights, we got to work with ComEd, and that increases cost. As we'd have to pay for them to install, then that increases our monthly invoice for utility. So that's something we can look at.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's costs associated with that.
About what does one street light run? If you know off the top of your head. If you
That I don't have memorized, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like installing new ones. It's, you got to run all the lighting to the electrical.
Typically, my experience is it's a couple $1,000s to get the utility company to come in and install. Then then there's additional to our franchise agreements and that it takes a little bit of work to get. And to be honest, it's usually not on ComEd's highest priority to do. To install more street lights for the community.
You done? I had one more.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
In regards to the $125,000 to bring our sidewalks into better ADA compliance, about how far does that get us? About how many sidewalks will we do? How many will we have left over?
So the 125 is really that portion is focused on ramps. Mm-hmm. The number one priority for the ADA transition plan is to bring in locations that don't have curb ramps currently, or ramps that are not in compliance or in bad shape. Where we're focusing in on is the location along Central and Ardmore and Park, along Central at Ardmore along that location. As those ramps are outdated, and they're not in compliance, and so they were marked as one of the last locations that needs to be improved on our transition plan. We do have our transition plan online, and it kind of prioritized locations, so we're going off those prioritization locations to replace the ramps. We don't touch a whole lot of sidewalk other than the sidewalk associated with the ramps.
Sure.
Does that answer?
Yes, thank you. I guess, actually, I would, so about how far does this put us into, how far do we have to go with compliance? Thank you, Bob. Close, in terms of having ramps that are of the appropriate type on all our sidewalks?
Yeah, I think we're nearing it. I think a lot of work's been done prior to my arrival, and so we have, if I, off my memory, I think 3 or 4 kind of locations throughout the community that we're focusing on.
Sure. I don't have any more.
Good, thank you. Trustee Solella.
I got a question for you. On the construction project priorities, I see a lot of the college streets and whatnot, and they're Wisconsin and whatnot. Part of the Jackson Pond improvement, those streets are getting redone, part of that project, I understand it. Jackson was pushed off a year, partly from COVID, partly from ECD development over by Jackson, and that's fine, I understand that. I don't see it in the project. Is it buried within the components of Jackson Pond improvement? Or is it separate from?
It'll be separate. The resurfacing of Jackson along that location from like Addison to, I believe, Ville. No, not sorry, Ville. Ville's too long. Ardmore.
Right.
We held that back to about 2023 is our initial plan. And the reason for that is the ECC is being constructed, so they kind of had intercuts into that. With the Jackson Pond expansion, we're going to be running a lot of trucks out of that location. So we kind of want to make sure that we wear out the old pavement. We don't want to repave it and then run new trucks over.
I understand it. I just don't see it.
So it won't be for this fiscal year, it'll be for the following fiscal year.
Would it fall underneath the pavement refurbishing, or is it going to fall under construction projects?
That will fall under capital, but I believe it's set for like a resurfacing, kind of a major resurfacing.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. Has the village had any communication with Salt Creek Sanitary District regarding our proposed improvements to the wet weather flow treatment facility and our SCADA systems?
Currently, no. Right now, the SCADA is solely our operation for our collection, both water and sanitary. So it only controls all of our water operations, our water towers, our canal pumping station, our meters, along with our wet weather treatment plant, which is solely ours at this current time, and then our collection system.
There was a point where both of our SCADA systems did communicate with each other. I know that information helps them regulate their treatment flow. What happened to break that communication where their SCADA system doesn't recognize ours or vice versa?
I think there was just a feed on certain flows from ours to theirs, along with theirs to ours in terms of how much flow they're taking out of our plant. As far as I've been here, that their section has not communicated with ours. I don't know if it's part of their improvements that they've completed at their plant. That's something that would be working on. What we're trying to do is update our software. I want to move to more mobile software where we can regulate and look at the plant at any time on tablets. Right now, we have to be at 2 actual physical stations to see. And obviously, if we have water dropping from the towers and stuff, we kind of have a guy. We don't have that information in our hands. We got to send guys back and forth. In terms of that, we would have to reestablish that with Salt Creek Sanitary District to see when we move into our new SCADA system, that connectivity where they can see our flows and we can see their inflows. I know our guys would love to see how much flow they're taking, because that helps us know how to actually operate the wet weather treatment plant facility and make sure that they're taking all the flow that they should be taking to limit how much we have to handle.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and thanks to staff and the manager. You guys have done a great job again this year, balancing our budget and using our money wisely. Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 8A, minutes from the board meeting held on November 8th, 2021, and bill listings for the weeks of November 8th and November 15th, 2021, in the total amount of $1,108,800.80. Do we have a motion? Trustee Kumar.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a second? Trustee Patrick.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that second.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, Clerk Konecki, roll call, please.
Okay, trustee Salella?
Yes.
Trustee Corkery?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
President Cassell?
Yes. We move on to item 9A, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $683,050 general obligation limited tax bonds, Series 2021 of the Village of Ville Park, DuPage County, Illinois, and for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal of and the interest on said bonds. Manager Keener.
Thank you, Your Honor. In 2017, the village issued alternate revenue bonds to refund TIF 3 debt certificates as part of the strategy to address insufficient TIF 3 revenue. These alternate revenue bonds are to be funded by rollover bonds issued each fall, which are paid back using our non-home rule debt service extension base, also known as DSUB. The rollover bonds were competitively bid on November 18, 2021. The attached ordinance shows the favorable rate received during the competitive bid process. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. We have a motion for this? Trustee Corcoran. Okay, we have a second?
I'll second it.
Trustee Kumar. Okay, any questions or comments? Trustee Kumar.
Okay, this is the same set of bonds that we assume in 2027 will be paid off, correct? Or paid off or something going on.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the DSUB bonds, but the 2017 alternate revenue bonds will be paid in full, I think, in the December payment of the 2027.
Okay, any other questions? Trustee Corcoran.
Are we expecting these kinds of revenue shortfalls going forward, or is the growth of the businesses there going to offset that? What's the expectation there?
Oh, yeah, the expectation's always there to increase, you know, as the property increase in value. It just has not been going as quickly as we'd like it to, but eventually, if property values go up a lot, then it'll start paying for itself.
Do we know why they're not increasing at the rate we'd expected, at the rate we'd hoped?
Yeah. You got an answer for that one? It's just...
It kind of, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's a good question. So some time ago, maybe 2009 or 10, the village sold a number of bonds to, in the TIF, so they were TIF bonds. And there was supposedly some development to occur back then. The development did not occur. If you remember, the economy took a downturn, a severe downturn, in 9 and 10 and 11, and didn't come out in more or less until 15 and 16 and moving forward to now. And so, but what's happened in that particular area is that some property has been developed. If you can remember, the North Park Plaza changed ownership. And so what's happening there, you know, the Wendy's never used to be there, so the Wendy's was developed, the outlots were developed, and now, hopefully in the spring, Casey's will develop on the North Avenue corner of Ardmore and North Avenue. That should bring sales tax, places of eating tax, MFT tax. Shoot Point Blank bought the village's property at 257, 277 East North Avenue. That now will become taxable and include sales tax. The village also sold its property at 325 East North Avenue. That becomes taxable now. So all this redevelopment, at some point in time, we hope will bring up the property tax increment in that area sufficient enough to hopefully pay the P&I on the 2017 alternate revenue bonds. So if it doesn't, then we still use the DSUB until they're paid off in 2027. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. We know, when is that TIF done? You know offhand?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Okay, well, that's I'm just curious. Okay, any other questions, comments? Clerk Konecki, roll call, please.
Okay, trustee Kozar?
Yes.
Trustee Salella?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Corkery?
Yes.
President Costello?
Yes. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 10, public comments on non-agenda items. Any signed up?
I don't sign it.
We have any comments on non-agenda items?
Just kind of a combination of both. I'm asking that the board work together. It's not a very long time the guys have to decide on this, getting us the bond, but it will affect everything in the village. So whether it's traffic, the bike thing, I know our grant for Lufkin is different, but this decision you're making now will affect that on how the government looks at us in future. Possibilities of getting grants and funding for other things we need in the village. So I'm just asking the board to please work together and try to work out the best thing for the people of this village on what it is. As he said, it's very hard to get these grants for that amount. And when we lost Lufkin, we had an agenda for 10 years to try to get a pool in and a rec center. And in that plan we had to think about doing a referendum to do it and bonds. You're looking at an opportunity now to get it in without affecting the people of village and possibly not having to go to a referendum or a lot of bonds to get this done for the rec center and pool. So please take that into consideration when you're trying to work with the village, that we've got an opportunity here. Make the best of it for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to village clerk's report.
No report today, thank
Okay.
you.
And we move to village trustees. We'll start on my left. Trustee Kumar.
A couple of things. I wanted to thank, first of all, our police officers for the great job they did with the situation which they faced at Safariland. I knew that there were some residents who were concerned about their houses, but on par with what the police officers did, they did a great job in alleviating that situation quickly. That's my first comment. My second is, a couple of weeks ago, I had sent to all the board members a process by which to get something on the agenda. And I did get a message back from Manager Keener explaining that many cities don't necessarily have such a process, and we have had a process where two trustees can bring something onto the agenda if they in fact agree to do so with the president. I do feel that that is not a concrete process, just having a sort of hereby way process. I really would like there to be a written concrete process for our board, the present board, because it looks like we need it for functionality. Even recently, something that was supposed to be on the P&Z committee meeting did not make it onto their onto the committee, even after 3 trustees asked that it be brought forth to the P&Z committee. So it is concerning that we're not following process, and maybe it's because we don't have a written process. It's important to have one for transparency and other aspects. Plus, times are changing. As times change, we need to kind of update our process so that it is convenient for all board members to have a say in things and it goes through in an efficient manner. So I am asking that we reconsider a actual written process in the future.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that. Although that's got nothing to do with the P and Z though. That's strictly for amendments for here.
Okay,
Board.
but anyway, the
yeah, no, we can look at
processes
that.
are a problem, okay?
Okay.
So, that is one thing. The third thing is I really am concerned that we're in a rush, and it is very important we get the 10 million. I have no doubts about it, and we have a deadline now of March 30th to get that. We need to quickly set up, and I mean rather quickly set up meetings in this very, in between December, January, and February, where there is considerable community input and a quick turnover, because the community has to decide what goes in a community center. And I do warn all of us on the board to not sit on it, as well as everyone in our staff to quickly set up those meeting dates so that everybody is aware of what is going to happen in that park, and what space we have and what decisions we make for that park and that community center.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Corcoran.
I'd just like to thank everyone who came out today. We had a lot of people here. We had a lot of public comment. It's really nice to see people getting involved in the process like this. I'm really looking forward to starting public hearings to hear what people want from the new community center. I hope I'll see you all there. I'm looking forward to hear what people want, and I hope we can get those started really soon, because time is definitely of the essence. So just thanks for coming, everyone, and hope to hear from you again real soon.
Trustee Murphy.
Yes, I guess I'll piggyback off of everyone else's comments with reference to the Wildwood Center. I am in favor of moving forward with that development. I am also in favor of making a beautiful green space over at Iowa Community Center and moving all our ball fields over there. With reference to the Wildwood Community Center, the area over there, with our senior housing proposed right next to the rec center, I think it's an awesome opportunity, and I don't know how familiar our residents are with our seniors and how many of them participate in our rec center programs. Our Thanksgiving senior lunch had 60 senior residents registered. They are extraordinarily active, and I think would really appreciate having an opportunity to live that close to the rec center, so I am highly in favor of that. I am also in favor of green space, though I am not adverse to green space, and I think we should start focusing on it or continue our focus on it, particularly with everything we've got going on. We're in an extraordinary position right now with the Garden Station development, potential development at Wildwood, and this Lufkin grant potentially coming through. So I do not disagree with the fact that we need to be looking at our green space, but I am highly in favor of moving this development at Wildwood forward. Above and beyond that, happy and safe Thanksgiving to everyone. Everyone have a blessed time, safe time spent with your relatives. And we'll look forward to moving into the holidays. We're getting really, really close to Joyful Traditions. I want to say that's the first Saturday in December, and they've got some awesome plans for that event, so mark that one down on your radar after you finish celebrating Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Kozar.
Yeah, so going off what Deepa was saying about the planning and zoning, 6.11 and 6.12 that were directed to be kicked down to planning and zoning weren't there. It was kicked down on the October 11th meeting. I think part of the problem was that the agenda didn't come out for 48 hours before that meeting, which is just not long enough. I also think, so I think that time should be extended. And additionally, I think that the packet, do you want to add something, Kathy?
No.
No.
The packet that is posted for planning and zoning should be made public as well. Everybody that is not sitting up on that, in that commission, cannot see what it is that planning and zoning, the commissioner members are looking at. There's no reason not to have that transparent, no reason not to have that put on the website so everybody can see all the information. Last week we had that liquor ordinance vote, and certain misinformation was given on that. To clarify that, if a president holds a liquor license, he cannot be the commissioner. If he is not the commissioner, he cannot vote in the commission. 235 ILCS 5/4-2 specifically states that. That was not the information given to the board. It's so important that the board can rely on good information from staff and sources that is given to them. And then lastly, I think that according to El Botas, I think he made a good point. I think the executive session minutes should be made public from last meeting. If the only confidential aspect of that was redacting the proposed sale price, redact the proposed sale price and let the public see the minutes for everything else. very important that everybody knows what's going on. And there is not this feeling that certain meetings are held behind closed doors. This is our village, everybody should be privy to it. That's all, thank you.
Okay. As far as the agenda for P and Z, I thought that it is on, it should be posted and all of that documentation should be available.
It is not, and we can look at the last meeting.
Okay. I will,
So the agendas are definitely posted. The packets are definitely available. They are distributed to the Planning and Zoning Commission a week before the meeting takes place, along with the agenda, the minutes as well. At any point, if there's any of the trustees that would like to get that packet at the same time, or anyone from the public, the files are open for viewing as well. They could definitely contact me if there's any issues with the agenda being posted electronically on the website. Definitely contact me.
but that is all posted, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I don't believe that it is. I'm looking at it right here, and the packet that the planning and zoning gets is not on the website, so it's not posted. It would, require the extra step to go to contact the director's office and get that packet?
No, if there's any issues with the electronic version that you see on the website, definitely contact me. I could definitely look into it, but the packets are definitely available for viewing.
But they're not posted on the website.
The agenda is posted on the website and should have hyperlinks to the items.
I understand the agenda is posted on the website. I'm talking about the packet that the commissioners get. Is
So-
not posted on the website. That's what I'm referring to.
That should, yeah, but that should be on the hyperlinks, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I'm
if
trying to say.
the hyperlinks aren't working, then we gotta look into it.
Definitely let me know.
There are no hyperlinks.
Yeah.
It's not on there.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're not working, they're just not on there.
If they're not on there, you should definitely let me know, because it should be on there. That's what I'm trying to say, that the P&Z agenda should be no different than the village board agenda, where there's hyperlinks. The items are hyperlinked. The minutes, the items.
So I would just suggest, as the director, take a look at the website. If it's not on there, do it. Don't rely on me as a trustee to have to inform you of that. They're never on there. I've never seen one hyperlink on there. So,
I would definitely be on top of that, so for the next one, making sure everything's hyperlinked accordingly to what they should be.
Okay. Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The Ville Park Police Department and the Fire Department continue to impress me. And I will stand by my statement that I think that we have the best departments in the entire state of Illinois. Thank you for all of your work. Keep up the great job. On a side note, everybody have a safe and happy Thanksgiving from my family to yours. Thank you.
Trustee Salo.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on the police department also with this latest incident. I happened to be in the area when I believe mutual aid all came in to be briefed or debriefed or whatever you policemen call that gathering at Safariland, and I was amazed. I counted over 40 different squads from different communities coming together to help us in a hopefully one-time situation. But the mutual aid support that you were able to pull together for that incident, it was amazing. It was like a parade of police cars. So hope we don't see it again, but for you guys to be able to pull that off in such short time and get that kind of help was very impressive. So thank you. And the other thing I have is just happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
Gobble till you wobble.
There you go. Okay, my report, I also would like to give a shout out to the police. Definitely did a great job. And it was great to hear that you have addressed any issues with the business there, and they are going to do something to change so that hopefully this incident won't happen again. But, you know, it's a crazy world out there, so, but hopefully they're getting enough safeguards in place there. I'd also like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy a safe and COVID-free, hopefully. It's nice to be able to get together with family and friends again this year, as we missed it all last year. And obviously, I will, again, talk about the Dan Gibbons Turkey Trot, which will be held this Thursday, starting at 9 a.m. sharp. Festivities start about 8:30. There's going to be spiritual singers. Jim Corneliuson will do the national anthem. We'll have the flyover with Lima Lima and a couple other things. So it's a great time, and it's a great way to burn off some calories, so then you can go home and eat a lot. And so enjoy it with 7,000 of your closest friends. And I do want to remind everyone that our meetings in December will be held December 6th and 13th. They will not be the 13th and 27th as we normally would because of the holiday. So December 6th and December 13th will be our meetings in December. And with that, we'll go to the village manager.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I just, on behalf of the staff and myself, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Have a safe and fruitful holiday. And, Your Honor, Director Scheibel would like to present the village revenues expenditures for October and more than likely year-to-date.
Thank you. So I'm going to share the summary of the general fund year-to-date revenues and expenditures as of October 31st. As of October 31st, 2021, the general fund year-to-date revenues are $23,084,440, which is an increase over October 2020 year-to-date of $4,059,564. As of October 31st, 2021, the general fund year-to-date expenses are $18,692,356, which is an increase over October 2020 year-to-date of $306,971. As of October 31st, 2021, the general fund year-to-date revenues are over expenses by $4,392,084, which is an increase over October 2020 by $3,752,593. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one more item, Your Honor. I want to talk a little bit about COVID since we're kind of going into the holidays. So the statewide positivity 7-day rolling average is now 3.3%, with 4,702 cases reported for today. DuPage County remains its substantial community spread with a 4.2% test positivity 7-day rolling average, with 478 positive COVID cases as of November 19. Boosters are now available for all adults aged 18 and over. Booster vaccinations are recommended 6 months after the Pfizer and Moderna 2-dose vaccine and at least 2 months after completion of primary vaccination with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Children ages 5 and up are now approved for the Pfizer vaccine, and DuPage County Health Department recommends residents contact their pediatrician, local pharmacy, and the child's school district to access available appointments. The DuPage County Caravan will be at the DuPage County Fairgrounds Wednesday, November 24th from 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. for ages 12 and up. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
That's
a mouthful. Okay. Okay, with that, we come to item 15, executive session. Pursuant to the general provisions of the Open Meetings Act, 5 ILCS 120/2, C1, personnel matters, C2, collective bargaining matters, C5, purchase or lease of property, C6, sale or lease of property, C11, pending litigation, and C21, discussion of closed session. We have a motion for executive session. Trustee Kumar.
I will make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Solella, roll call vote, please.
Okay. Trustee Corkery?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
No.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
Trustee Solella?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
President Cassell?
Yes. Okay, with that, we will go into executive session, and we will close out the meeting after that. Again, our next meeting is scheduled for December 6th, 2021, and everyone have a great, happy, and safe Thanksgiving.